Let's get on to the big corporate story of the day. The big question, of course, is the Telkom turnaround plan bearing fruits? To answer that question, we do have the Chief Executive, Sipho Maseko, at the desk. Thank you so much for making the time to join us. Now, all things being said, I've seen lots of headlines, and most of them seem to point to shareholders running to the bank excited about this dividend payout that they haven't seen in at least 4 years. Are dividends here to stay?
Well, it's much more than just a dividend story. I think if you look at almost all of the metrics, I think our EBITDA is up 15%, net revenue up 3.1%, costs down in real terms about 5.2%. The firm is generating jolly good cash, 3.9 billion. We have no debt, so practically we owe nobody else. So clearly, with a sort of performance like that, I think that it was the right thing to do, to declare dividend, and also to add a special div on top of that. Our shareholders have waited for a little while, and I think that it was the right thing to do.
Sipho, I remember when you came into the position, I think the share price was around 11, 12 rand. I know chief executives, they don't like to talk about the share price, but the share price has been up 66, 67, 70 rand. Let's not talk about the share price, but talk about how you've done this, how you've produced, in other words, a set of numbers where your revenue is reasonable, but the headline earnings are much more. Now, you're doing something right when your earnings and your profit are quite a lot more than your revenue.
Sure. Well, a few things. I mean, clearly, when this journey began, what was very clear for us was that we needed to do a number of things. Our mobile business was burning a lot of cash at the time. So what did we do about it? We really put it into essentially an ICU position. The management team, I think, responded very, very well. In fact, actually, I'm not just impressed about them. I'm super impressed about them. The response in terms of not just building a new network, but looking to build a new distribution model. As you may well know, most of the distribution has been lapped up by the bigger mobile entities, so they had to be pretty nimble to create a new distribution model, new customers, ARPU strengthening. So I think they've done a pretty good job actually about the company. Managed CapEx on a lot more disciplined basis than they may have done before. But more importantly, what we've tried to drive is a multi-year cost efficiency program. We started off about 2 years ago. All costs were on the table. Nothing was off the table. And that journey will continue going forward. We've also sought to begin to arrest the decline. So clearly the decline in voice will continue. We know about that. It's not just a phenomenon for us, but it's a phenomenon globally as voice revenues decline. Voice is finite. You can only talk to a point, and then you can't talk.
Well, I don't know about that.
Whilst data is infinite.
But Joseph, we want to come to Joseph in a moment. But Joseph, before you ask your question, I think we've got a graph of what the share price has done since you took over. So let's just have a look at that, because that was what I asked. And that certainly looks like a lovely mountain that's been climbed. It looks at around 12, 13, 14 rand a share there. And it touched above 80. Did it go above 80?
Let me help you with your eyes. I know your eyesight is not good. That's 67.10.
Right.
Went to 85.
Yeah. 85 cents, that's the target he's put down.
Look at the maximums and minimums. It's like temperatures.
Let's have you covered.
Fantastic. Mr. Maseko, one of the key issues, Sipho, why is it businesses, when they're restructuring or trying to cut costs, and I see you talked about 5% reduction costs, this is mainly based on retrenchments and reducing staff and so on. Isn't there any other strategies I believe businesses can employ to be able to have a turnaround? That's the first point. The second point really is that your mobile, you say it's in ICU, but certainly with government as one of your major shareholders, why could not sell the network to government employees?
Yeah, so I mean, just on costs. So we've looked at all classes of costs. I kind of call 3 categories of costs. First-party costs. There's people. We started with management layers. So just to give you a perspective, the number of layers between the top man and the customer was about 13, 14 layers. So, and you can tell by the time I get a customer complaint at my desk, the guy is blowing his gasket off because he's been shunted around the entire company. So clearly the number of layers that we had created quite a lot of complexity, and the spans of control were very thin. So we had one-on-one relationships where we were salami slicing accountability, so we needed to fix that. We then looked at what we call second-party costs. So those costs, you don't see them. Those costs hide in cost of goods.
Yeah.
And that is why one of the things we're beginning to see is that even our margin performance is beginning to be better. So we open that up. We look and interrogate every cost line. And thirdly, it was third-party costs. So all of our suppliers, we brought them in. We told them these are tough times, so you guys have to reduce the costs that you sell this stuff to us. And in a very funny way, in telecoms, customers want to have more bandwidth, higher speeds for less.
Lower cost, yeah.
Yeah. So therefore, how you balance that equation is very, very important. We haven't had a target around retrenchments, but we're pursuing a staff expense to revenue ratio, where 2 years ago we had about 31.5%. Global benchmarks is that we should be at about 22%. Over the next 5 years, we need to get to about 25%. And our local competitors are at about 8% of staff expense to revenue ratio.
There's a simple number there. Operating expenses in this year that we're talking about down 1.5%.
Two quick questions on that. The first one being, it's a tight balancing act to get that efficiency from a human resource perspective, whilst also making sure that you don't rattle too many cages. And in this instance, I'm talking about the unions. So a quick comment on that. And then just a quick update on where are you with the talks of network sharing with MTN? Can you bring us up to speed there?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll start with the MTN bit. We're still with the Competition Commission process. It is a complex deal. It's never been done anywhere else in the world. Normally what would happen is that two network operators will hand over the network to a third party to optimize the network. What we're doing here is almost counterintuitive. We're giving it to one of our competitors to manage it. So clearly the Commission and ICASA need to kind of get their minds around this. What does this mean? Is it an exclusive arrangement? And we're saying no, it is not. Anyone who can bring all of the elements around this can be part of this particular setup. So we'll obviously have to wait out the process.
Sipho, one of the analysts who came into our studio at the time when the share price was around 13 Rand, very scathing, and he said, Telkom, it's basically a copper mine. What do you say, though? Because implicit in that is saying it's an outdated technology, outdated business model. You've got to get away from it as quickly as you can, and yet it's still important to you.
Well, I mean, one of the things we're doing is we're modernizing the network, especially the access network. There's a lot of fiber to the home. I think now we've probably passed about 30,000 homes with fiber to the home. We're also modernizing our mobile network with LTE and LTE Advanced. Broadband and broadband growth will be phenomenal. I actually think that all of the investment that we're making now and the use case for broadband is getting stronger and stronger. And I think that Telkom, actually in a converged world, we're well poised for that.
Well, good results for Telkom. Certainly a good share price picture that we saw there, even though I couldn't see all the numbers on it. And what I was trying to do was say where it was at the bottom and the top, not where it is now.
I'll contact lenses. I know you don't like glasses. They'll work, I promise. Or you can borrow my eyes for a moment. A very big thank you to Sipho Maseko. He is the Chief Executive at Telkom.